Hi, I'm Bobby Jindal, Governor of the great state of Louisiana. Thank you for the opportunity to address your summit. Like you, I'm greatly concerned about what President Obama is doing to hollow out our military. At a time where we're going to be spending more of our economy on the government than we've had in decades, we're going to be spending less of it on our military. Now that troubles me. The reality is the Constitution tells the federal government it has to do one thing, and that is to guard our country, safeguard us, keep us safe. The reality is our federal government is doing all kinds of things it shouldn't be doing, like Common Core, like micromanaging our states and local governments, like interfering with our lives, mandates like Obamacare's mandates, EPA's overreach, and all this other nonsense like the IRS going after conservative groups. At the same time, I argue it's actually neglecting and ignoring its core responsibilities. We're going to have fewer troops. We're going to have fewer planes, ships, and older equipment than any time in decades. This is at a time when the threats to America are increasing. This is at a time when Russia is investing in modernizing their nuclear arsenal. This is at a time when China is investing in a blue water navy. This is at a time when ISIS is a growing threat and Iran wants to become a nuclear power. What President Obama, what Hillary Clinton don't seem to understand is that peace through strength works. Weakness is actually provocative to evil. America has never lost a battle because we were too strong. I never want America's military to be in a fair fight. I want them to dominate any potential conflict. I've actually outlined my ideas in a detailed policy paper. You can go to americanext.org and learn more about why I think we need to be getting up to 4% of our GDP in terms of what we invest in our military. You know, President Reagan understood this peace through strength. He actually deployed troops less frequently than presidents before him and after him. The reality is the best way, ironically, to avoid a war is to prepare for a war. This president doesn't understand that. President Obama continues to apologize for America, criticize America. He is the first president that I can remember who does not believe in American exceptionalism. We saw a remarkable speech several days ago by Prime Minister Cameron over in the UK. He talked about the threat of radical Islamic terrorism. Made it very clear this wasn't due to poverty, that rather it was an evil ideology. Made it very clear that Muslim leaders have a special responsibility. Boy, I wish our president would talk like that. He may be the last leader in the Western world, in the free world, who refuses to name the enemy of radical Islamic terrorism. You know, he brags about leading from behind. I don't like America to lead from behind. Maybe this is one time he actually might have a point. He can lead from behind. He can listen to Prime Minister Cameron and actually copy his approach towards radical Islamic terrorism. How can we beat an enemy if we want to identify the enemy? Instead, the president goes to the Pentagon. The administration announces the same week they're going to cut 40,000 troops from the Army, leaving us our smallest force since right before World War II. At that meeting at the Pentagon, the president says, we're not going to beat radical Islamic terrorism with guns. Rather, this is a generational conflict where we have to change hearts and minds. You know, I don't know about you, but I'm happy that Generals Patton and Eisenhower didn't have that approach to World War II. If they did, the French would be speaking German today. You know, guns come in handy when you're dealing with evil terrorists, murderers, rapists, who are out there killing Christians and other religious minorities, Muslims even, and other religious minorities in the name of their cause. This is an evil ideology. We don't need to contain them. We don't need to degrade them. We need to hunt them down and kill them. And as long as we allow them to occupy this territory in Iraq and Syria and build their so-called caliphate, we're going to see more attacks at home like we did here in Garland, Texas. Or in other attacks. You know, the administration still calls Fort Hood an incident of workplace violence. 24 hours after Charleston, he was quick to want to politicize that tragedy and talk about gun control. And yet, even after Chattanooga, we don't hear this president talking about terrorism. We don't hear him talking about radical Islamic terrorism. Enough's enough. We don't need a president that will be politically correct. We need a commander-in-chief who will take the handcuffs off the military, take the political handcuffs, give them the support they need to be successful. We need a strategy to win. Not only that, we need a commander-in-chief who will say to Muslim clerics and leaders, it is not enough to condemn generic acts of violence. You have to condemn the individuals by name. Say these murderers are not martyrs who are going to enjoy a reward in the afterlife. Rather, they're going straight to hell where they belong. Secondly, we need a commander-in-chief who also says that to these same Muslim clerics and leaders, if you want rights and freedoms and religious liberty, you need to explicitly embrace those same rights and freedoms for people with different religious beliefs than your own. That is not too much to ask. And that is how we're going to be successful in winning this war against radical Islamic terrorism. We can't allow Iran to become a nuclear power. We need to reject this bad deal. We cannot allow China to continue to ascend in Asia, threatening our allies and our interests. There are going to be asymmetrical attacks and asymmetrical threats. We've already seen the cyber security attacks. We've already seen the threat of bioterror attacks. There are other asymmetrical attacks that could happen if we don't prepare. You know, the federal government, its most important responsibility is to keep us safe. We can do that by investing in our military. Again, I don't want our military to ever be in a fair fight. Let's support investment in our military so we would dominate any potential conflict. I'm all for shrinking the federal budget. I'm all for balancing the budget. I think we need to spend less, not more. But one area we need to be investing more in is our defense and our military. If we don't, the cost to preserve our freedoms will be far greater in treasure and lives. We need to get off the dangerous path that we are on now. I want to just close with a final observation. I've outlined many serious challenges facing our country, especially if we continue down this dangerous path. But the good news is we're still blessed to live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Ronald Reagan reminded us that we were that city on a shining city on a hill. But he also reminded us that freedom wasn't inevitable, that every generation has to choose for itself to renew those principles of freedom. We are now at that moment in our country's history. Previous generations have spilt great blood and treasure to give us the opportunity to live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Now it is our time to choose. Now it is our time to decide what kind of country we want to leave to our own children, to our own grandchildren. I'm Bobby Jindal. If you want to learn more, please go to bobbyjindal.com. I'm a candidate for president, and I certainly hope that you agree with me. Now is the time to invest in our military. Now is the time to ensure that America continues to be the greatest country in the history of the world. God bless y'all, and thank y'all for having me.